This house behind me has been frozen in time, untouched for decades. The truck still parked in the driveway, a city violation notice sitting there for so long, we knew we had to do something about it.
Type a beloved creator's name into YouTube search bar and pause after the word "the." And the algorithm will usually finish your sentence with something ominous. Truth, exposed, tragedy, what really happened. It doesn't matter if the creator posted a video last Tuesday. It doesn't matter if their disappearance is really just a 3-week gap between uploads or a slower posting schedule during a busy season. The genre exists independent of the facts, because the genre isn't really about the facts. It's about the feeling of being let in on something. M&D Lawn Care, the Channel View, Texas father and son duo who mow overgrown yards for free for people who can't afford it, has become one of the genre's favorite subjects over the past year. A search for their names turns up a small industry of videos, some framed as heartfelt tributes, some as exposés, some promising that Martin has finally admitted what we all suspected. The channel itself has done nothing to invite this. It posts lawn transformations. It doesn't post scandal. And that gap between an ordinary, wholesome channel and an extraordinary volume of speculative content about its host is itself worth examining, because it says less about Martin Hernandez than it does about how attention economies process kindness. These videos follow a recognizable structure, almost regardless of which creator they're about. They open with praise, genuine, often accurate praise about why the person became beloved in the first place. Then they pivot on a single observed fact. Fewer uploads, a missed appearance, a comment left unanswered. From that one data point, the video builds a narrative arc using conditional language that sounds like reporting but functions like fiction. Did something happen? Sources suggest. Fans have noticed. The truth may be more complicated than it seems. What makes the format effective is that it never quite lies. It rarely states an invented fact outright. Martin has cancer or Daniel and Martin are estranged, because that would be checkable and disprovable. Instead, it gestures. It asks questions it doesn't answer. It describes emotions the subject supposedly felt, using free indirect narration that reads like insight, but is actually invention. The weight he carried, the pressure only to feel, the burden no one saw. None of that is sourced to an interview, a statement, or a person who knows Martin Hernandez. It's narrated as though the video's writer has access to his interior life. They don't. Nobody watching does either. This matters because the emotional force of these videos depends entirely on the audience not noticing the scene between here is what is publicly documented, and here is what I'm imagining on his behalf. A well-produced version can be genuinely moving, sad music, slow narration, real footage, while containing almost no verified information about the person's actual current circumstances. It would be easy to assume that speculation content targets scandal-prone figures, people already embroiled in controversy, where there's a real story to chase. But some of the most persistent, what really happened, content targets the opposite. Creators known for being unusually sincere, modest, and consistent. M&D Lawn Care fits that pattern closely. Martin doesn't perform for the camera. He's not fluent in English on-screen the way Daniel is, which the channel has never hidden and audiences have never held against him. The channel's whole appeal rests on the sense that what you're watching is real. A real father, a real son, a real business, real neighbors getting real help. That sincerity is exactly what makes the audience so responsive to any perceived change in rhythm. Viewers who feel real affection for a creator, not parasocial obsession. Just ordinary fondness built over months of watching someone be consistently decent. Notice absence more acutely than they notice presence. A gap in uploads from a flashy commentary channel reads as scheduling. A gap in uploads from a channel built on quiet reliability reads as rupture. The speculation isn't cynical most of the time. It's often the audience's affection curdling into worry because they have no other channel through which to express that they miss someone. Content creators then fill that vacuum. Not necessarily out of malice, but because "is he okay?" is a question with enormous built-in demand, and video essays answering unanswerable questions are cheap to produce and reliably watched. The economics of the format reward confident-sounding narration over honest uncertainty. A video titled M&D Lawn Care hasn't posted in a while. Here's what we know performs worse than one titled the truth about what happened to Martin. So creators, often ones with no actual connection to the subject, choose the second title, and then have it fill 20 minutes of narration to match it. None of this is unique to lawn care, or to Martin and Daniel specifically. What really happened to is a template that predates their channel by years, and has been applied in nearly identical form to musicians who took a break between albums, child actors who grew up out of the spotlight, athletes between seasons, and streamers who simply changed platforms. The wording barely changes. Neither does the structure. A warm opening recap of why the person was loved, a pivot on some minor observed absence, a stretch of speculative narration, and a closing line that promises resolution without actually providing one. What's changed over time is the speed and scale at which this template gets applied. A decade ago, this kind of speculation mostly lived in forum threads and comment sections, where uncertainty was at least visible in the format itself. A thread full of people guessing, disagreeing, correcting each other. The video essay version strips that visible uncertainty out. A single narrator, a confident voiceover, stock transitions, and dramatic music package speculation as if it had already been through some kind of verification process. It hasn't. It's the same forum thread guessing, just wearing the visual grammar of a documentary. This matters for how audiences should read the genre. A YouTube video with professional editing, a calm narrator, and a serious tone borrows credibility cues from actual journalism, pacing, structure, the absence of visible hedging, without doing any of journalism's actual work. Contacting the subject, checking claims against multiple sources, distinguishing between what's confirmed and what's inferred. Viewers are reasonably trained to trust content that looks rigorous. The genre exploits that trained trust. It's worth being plain about why so many of these videos exist for creators like M&D Lawn Care specifically, because the answer isn't mysterious at all. They're inexpensive to produce and reliably profitable. A commentary channel doesn't need permission access or original footage to make a video about another creator. It needs a search-friendly title, a handful of publicly available clips, a script built mostly from inference, and a voiceover. Compare that cost structure to what M&D Lawn Care itself has to do to make one video. Locate a property, get permission from the homeowner, haul equipment, spend a full day of physical labor, then edit the footage down to 20 minutes. The commentary video can be produced in an afternoon. The lawn transformation, it speculates about, took a full workday of manual labor to create in the first place. That asymmetry shapes the incentives on both sides. The original creator is rewarded for doing slow, honest, expensive and time work. The commentary creator is rewarded for producing fast, cheap, speculative work about the original creator. And because search algorithms favor freshness and emotional keywords, a new, what really happened video can often outperform the very source material it's commenting on, at least in short bursts. Titles built around loss, secrecy, or revelation reliably outperform titles built around patience, labor, or gradual change, even when the second set of words is closer to what's actually true. A video called Martin's Business is just busy right now will not compete with one called The Truth They Don't Want You to Know, regardless of which one is accurate. None of this requires bad faith on the part of every person who makes this kind of video. Some are genuinely fans working with limited information and good intentions, try and make sense of a gap they noticed. But the incentive structure exists independent of any individual creator's intentions, and it consistently rewards confident narration over honest uncertainty, which is exactly why the genre keeps reproducing itself around new subjects every few months, almost regardless of whether there's anything actually going on. The actual, documented facts about most creators who go through a slower posting period are unglamorous. A small landscaping business has a busy season and a slow season. Equipment breaks and needs replacing before can be filmed breaking. A father who has spent years doing physically demanding outdoor labor in Texas heat eventually paces himself differently than he did at 30. A son who started as an assistant on camera takes on more responsibility as the operation grows, which naturally shifts who appears in more shots. None of this requires tragedy, conflict, or concealment to explain. It requires only the ordinary math of running a small business, while also being a human body that gets tired and a family that has a life outside the lens. This is, if anything, the more interesting story, not because it's dramatic, but because it's representative. Every long-running creator eventually has to negotiate the same three-way tension, The underlying work that pays the bills, whatever mission or passion project, drew people to the channel in the first place, and the expectations an audience develops once growth happens. Those three pressures don't always pull in the same direction. Free work is meaningful precisely because it isn't optional revenue, but channel can't run only on free work without the paid side collapsing underneath it. An audience that grew attached to a certain upload rhythm will feel its absence even when the absence has a completely mundane explanation. Speculation content skips past that ordinary tension because ordinary tension doesn't generate views the way mystery does. But the ordinary tension is actually the truer and more respectful story to tell because it doesn't require inventing anything about a real person's private life to make sense of what viewers are seeing. There's a cost to this genre beyond just factual inaccuracy. When a creator's actual mission is something like help people who are too embarrassed or too broke to ask for help, speculation content quietly redirects the emotional energy the mission was supposed to generate. Instead of talking about the elderly homeowner whose yard finally got cut or the family who avoided a code violation, the conversation becomes about the creator's supposed inner turmoil, a subject nobody involved has actually spoken about publicly. The people the work was meant to center get replaced in the discourse by manufactured concern for the person doing the work. It also puts real subjects in an odd position. A creator who wants to correct false speculation has to first acknowledge that the speculation exists, which often gives it more oxygen than it had before. Ignoring it risks the rumors calcifying into assumed fact, especially once enough separate channels have repeated a version of the same unverified narrative that it starts to look, through sheer repetition, like something people already know. This is a well-documented dynamic in how misinformation about public figures spreads generally. Repetition builds a kind of borrowed credibility that no single video ever earned on its own. For viewers who genuinely want to stay informed about creators they care about, without absorbing invented narrative as fact, there are a few reliable tells that separate honest reporting from speculation dressed as revelation. The first is sourcing. Honest content about a change in a creator's schedule points to something specific and checkable. A community post, a comment from the creator themselves, an interview, a documented business filing. Speculative content almost never does this, because there's usually nothing to point to. Watch for phrases like sources suggest, fans believe, or it's been reported that are never followed by an actual named source. That phrasing is doing the work of sounding source without being sourced. The second is emotional narration written from inside someone else's head. Any sentence that describes what a real person felt, carried, or struggled with, without a quote, an interview, or a statement from that person, is invention. However sincerely it's delivered, a narrator can accurately describe what viewers saw. They cannot accurately describe what someone else privately experienced unless that person told them. The third is the shape of the resolution. Genuine reporting on a change in a creator's life usually ends with either confirmed fact or an honest "we don't know." Speculative content almost always ends with a satisfying emotional arc. The mystery gets narratively resolved even when it was never factually resolved. That neatness is a warning sign. Real situations, especially ordinary ones like a business's slow season or a family adjusting how they split labor, don't usually resolve into a tidy 3-act structure. Only stories do. The fourth is simply asking what changes if the speculation turns out to be false. If a video's central claims could be quietly deleted tomorrow without anyone noticing or caring, that's usually a sign the video was never built to be checked against reality in the first place. It was built to be watched. None of this means viewers are wrong to care, or that curiosity about a creator's well-being is itself the problem. Genuine affection for people who show up consistently and do good, visible work is one of the healthier things the internet produces. The issue isn't the caring. It's the narrative machinery that turns caring into invented content, because invented content is more profitable than the honest answer, which is usually just, we don't actually know, and it's not really our business unless they choose to share it. A more honest version of this kind of video is possible, and some creators do manage it. State clearly what's publicly confirmed. Note what's genuinely unknown. Resist the urge to narrate someone else's emotional interior, and let the ordinariness of the likely explanation stand on its own instead of dressing it up as revelation. That version is less viral. It's also the only version that treats its subject, a real, still working, still mowing, still raising his son person, like a person rather than a character in someone else's story. The most honest thing that can be said about Martin Hernandez, based on what's actually public, is the same thing that can be said about most creators whose upload schedule slows down. The work is hard, the business is real, and running both a mission and a livelihood at the same time takes a toll that has nothing to do with scandal. That's not a mystery. It's just what it looks like to keep doing something difficult for a long time. It would be easy to treat all of this as a minor quirk of internet culture, harmless guessing about a public figure who will never see most of the videos made about him. But the M&D Lawn Care case is a useful example precisely because the channel's actual content is so far from scandalous. There is no controversy to investigate, no falling out confirm or deny, no business failure to document. The entire premise of the speculation genre, applied here, has almost nothing to work with, and it still produces a small wave of videos anyway. That says something important. The genre doesn't require a real mystery to activate. It only requires an audience that cares, an absence to point at, and a title format that has already proven it gets clicks. That's worth sitting with, because it means the genre isn't really responding to anything specific about Martin or Daniel at all. It's a pattern that will attach itself to almost any creator who builds enough of an audience and then, for entirely ordinary reasons, changes pace. The next subject won't be chosen because something actually happened to them. They'll be chosen because they're popular enough to generate views and quiet enough that nobody can immediately disprove whatever gets said about them. Recognizing that pattern doesn't require cynicism about the creators being covered, and it doesn't require dismissing viewers' genuine affection as naive. It just requires separating two things that the genre works hard to blur together: caring about someone and being told a story about them that nobody actually checked. The first is one of the better instincts an audience can have. The second is a business model wearing its clothes.